think there's something wrong with Laura.
Oh my God, what is it? We can bring it back.
From the minds behind Talk to Me, Danny and Michael Philippou return with Bring Her Back, a devastating tale of grief, trauma, and the occult. Distributed by A24 and starring Sally Hawkins, this one's a gut punch. Let's unpack that brutal ending, the ritual at its core, and what it all means. Major spoilers ahead. The film follows step-siblings Andy and blind Piper, placed in the home of foster mother Laura, played by Hawkins, after their father dies. Laura, grieving her own daughter's recent drowning, becomes increasingly unstable. Living with them is Olly, a disturbed boy Laura claims is her nephew, but he's actually a kidnapped child named Connor, possessed or influenced by a demon. We learn that Laura is using a cult's VHS tape that outlines a ritual to bring her daughter Kathy back from the dead. Her plan? Use Piper as a vessel for Kathy's soul, with Olly or Connor as the conduit. Laura gaslights Andy, sabotages his mental health, and even urinates on his bed to isolate him. Meanwhile, Olly's behavior turns dangerous, eating a knife, convulsing at boundaries, and later consuming parts of Kathy's corpse. When Andy discovers Olly's true identity, he tries to stop Laura, but she kills him. At the climax, Laura attempts to drown Piper in a ritual to mimic Kathy's death, but at the last moment, someone, either Piper or Kathy through Olly, calls out "Mom," stopping Laura cold. Piper escapes, Connor is freed, and Laura is left cradling her daughter's corpse in the pool, completely broken.
So, what happened? The cult's ritual had 4 steps. Contact the demon, achieve through the VHS and Connor's possession, mimic the death, Kathy drowned, so Piper had to drown, consume the body. Connor eats parts of Kathy to process the soul, regurgitate the soul. The final step, where Kathy's soul would replace Piper's. The interruption at the pool breaks the cycle, saving Piper. Who said mom? The film leaves that ambiguous. If it was Kathy, a final moment of truth, breaking through Laura's delusion. If it was Piper, a desperate survival tactic to exploit Laura's grief. Either way, that single word shatters Laura's grip on reality. Laura's fate and grief is horror. In the final image, Laura sits immersed in the pool with Kathy's corpse. Whether she dies, is arrested, or catatonically lost doesn't matter. The image is a metaphor. Laura is drowned by her own grief, transformed into a monster by the belief she could reverse death. Her angels were likely demons feeding on her sorrow. Andy's arc. Andy's story is tragic. Haunted by past abuse and trauma, he dies trying to protect Piper. His final voicemail, which Piper hears as a plane flies overhead, symbolizes his soul finding peace. Connor's liberation. Connor, or really Olly, escapes. His recognition of his own missing poster snaps the spell. But he's scarred, an innocent caught in someone else's obsession. Thematic core. Bring Her Back isn't about cults. It's about how grief, unprocessed, can isolate, consume, and destroy. The VHS tapes aren't explained because they don't need to be. The horror is that they can be found by anyone broken enough to believe in them. Connection to Talk to Me. The filmmakers hint that this may be a shared universe with Talk to Me, expanding on the idea of objects and rituals as spiritual gateways to grief-stricken people. A haunting prospect for future films. Conclusion. Bring Her Back is a chilling meditation on loss. The ritual failed, but the real horror is what grief did to Laura. Andy is gone, and while Piper and Connor survive, they're forever changed. This is one of the most emotionally devastating horror endings in recent memory, and a reminder that some doors are best left closed.
Well, sometimes that is better.
As of June 3rd, this is the best horror movie of the year.
Yes, I agree, without a doubt. I thought that Sinners might be the best one, although it maybe had some flaws, but it was very, very good. But this one really, yeah, really stands out, I think. Head and shoulders above everything else.
The reason it's number one for me is it stayed with me. I think I messaged you on Twitter that I started watching this movie and I can't finish it because at a certain point in the film, I realized any character could die, and likely a lot of the characters will die. Potentially all of the characters could die. And it was just so emotionally draining that I had to take a break for a few hours before I watched the last act. It was like 28 minutes and change. And I was like, no, this is too much for me to take. I need a break. Even with that said, it's still a deeply flawed film in my eyes. But the reason it's number one and the reason I couldn't finish is the emotional aspects. From a movie standpoint, there are a lot of flaws. But before we get into the flaws, what's your perspective on the film as well?
When I read that you had to stop watching it, I thought, oh my God, I have to watch this film. And, I will admit I did stop it a couple of times, not so much because I was like so overwhelmed, but just because I had to make a few notes, because things were happening. And oh my God, yeah, there are some moments in here. I mean, it starts off with this really immediate atmosphere of unease and dread that just kind of keeps going unabated and until it kind of opens up into what I saw as one of the most disturbing scenes I've witnessed in a long, long time. And I kind of thought, okay, that's it. The movie has shown me as bad as it's going to get here. But no, they managed to top themselves, and I think they topped themselves again. So it's not only is it just generally unnerving, there are some scenes in there that are truly, truly disturbing in a way that I rarely see.
Well, we're beyond spoilers, so let's get into exact details here. So, I mean, for me emotionally, it deals with loss, it deals with PTSD, manipulation, gaslighting, and the strongest element for me is the gaslighting and manipulation and the way that Laura tries to sabotage Andy's relationship with Piper. For me, that was the strongest part of the movie, and I wish it focused on that more. If the movie was only on that, I would have been thrilled. The when you saw her urinating into the cup and pouring it on him, and then pulling his eyelids back and opening his phone, I'm like, holy crap, this is some like next level stuff here. And
Yeah.
I wish what the movie did with that was great, but I wish there was more of that because I can't relate to it on that level, but I think everyone has had someone in their life, and generally it's after the fact that you're like, this person was never really my friend. This person who I thought liked me or loved me, either in a relationship or as a friendship or as a relative or whatever it is, I thought this person was in it for my best interest, but they were just stabbing me in the back the whole time. I think everyone has some kind of a relationship that can relate to that. Hopefully not on this level. But for me, that was the strongest part of the movie. And I wish there was more of it.
Yeah, that stuff was really good. And I mean, that's part of where the dread lies for me is right off the top. I thought, oh man, this is a bad situation. I mean, there's something inherently disturbing or scary about, you know, kids going into a system like the foster care system. I mean, that in itself is just kind of generally scary and dealing with people who may not have your best interests at heart, who may be in it for the wrong reasons. And in this case, we're told pretty early on that she's had some kind of problems with boys in the past, and I thought, oh man, this is just not going to go well. And right from the first day, you can kind of tell, uh-oh, there's going to be problems here. And so, yeah, I just was dreading, where is this going to go and how bad is it going to get? And I was a little surprised, I suppose, when she, poured her urine on him, but at the same time. I wasn't in a way because I thought she's definitely going to be trying to frame him and make him look bad. And, but that was, as you said, taking it to another level of crazy. And, yeah, that was scary in a very real way, I think.
And people like that, it's not just that they do that stuff, but they earn your trust.
Yeah.
They know your deepest, darkest secrets and they make you feel comfortable. And then they use that against you. And I
Yeah.
think that was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
A few more positives before I get into the things that I didn't think quite landed. It is a horror, but it's more psychological. The horror elements is definitely Ollie's self-harm. That
Mhm.
was hard to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
a
That
lot
was,
of what made me want to look away is that like
yes.
there's a lot of self-harm with Ollie that was really horrific.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That was it for me, too. Some of those scenes were right up there with the most disturbing scenes I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, yeah. I also forgot to mention what she reminded me of, and the relationship with her and Andy was Iago and Othello. I'm not sure how
Oh,
familiar you are
yes.
with Shakespeare. I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
relationship with Iago and Othello, where Othello
Yes.
is this vulnerable character who has his insecurities and has his issues, and Iago, who he thinks is his friend, is his worst enemy. And
Yes.
that's I just love where this this main character thinks this person is the person he can trust the most, and it's the
Yeah.
person he should trust the least.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
I forgot to mention that part. I think that's why I love it so much because I think that's my favorite Shakespeare play,
Oh, yeah.
and for me that dynamic just reminded me of Iago and Othello. But
Yeah.
yeah, as far as the elements that didn't quite work for me, like I said, that could have been developed more. Also, Piper, it seemed like she was going to be an interesting character. And I think the actress is partially blind as well. I think in the movie, like both of her eyes are kind of blind, but in reality, I think just one of her eyes blind. But either way,
Yeah.
when the movie initially started, it seemed like she had somewhat of a personality. You know, she initiated the conversation with the girls and obviously the protective brother,
Mhm.
shielding her from what they were really saying, but she seemed like, all right, there's something they're going to be doing with her character, but they did nothing with her character. It
Mhm.
that beginning scene where we first see her and she tries to talk to the girls and tries to make a joke and tries to blend in. I wish there was more of that. More of her trying to be a regular teenager or trying to or just being a person. She just became a tool for the other characters and a plot device, between Andy and Laura and replacing the daughter. And she kind of was the main character, kind of in the end, but I didn't really learn much about her.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting point because at the beginning it seemed like she may have had a problem with her brother in a way because she was saying some pretty negative things to the girls about him, and I thought, okay, what's this all about? But then after that, it seemed like they were just fairly
Well, I
close.
think she said that just to break the ice. I think that's what it was. She was trying to be friends with them. Oh, that's
I
my.
guess, yeah, yeah, but yeah, it seemed like there was more there that we were going to learn, but yeah, you're right. They never go too far into that. And I guess she's chosen partly because she's blind and Kathy, the dead girl, was blind as well. Is that
I don't. Yeah, they mentioned that, but
yeah,
just focusing on the characters here. For me, she was a little underdeveloped, and I wish
yeah.
there was more to her. Even if it wasn't stuff that directly led to the plot, if it was stuff to make us care about her more or see her more three-dimensional, I think that would have helped. It didn't have to be completely linear, but just give her a personality. Let's see her interact with more kids. Does she win anyone over? Does she feel
Mhm.
comfortable in her new environment aside from in the home life? In the new school, is that a fresh start for her where she can meet new girls who don't make fun of her, we just didn't get a lot from her character. And for a central character, I wish there was a little bit more there. Ollie was also a little bit underdeveloped. Even though, his mind was taken over, there was still something there. And once he said his last name, Bird,
Mhm.
and then Andy realized, hey, it's a missing kid, I wish they developed him a little bit more so
Yeah,
that we cared about whether he lived or died at the end. And for me, I cared about him in the sense that it's a kid. You don't want to see a kid die in a movie. But I didn't really care about him. He was just this, again, a plot device, much like Piper, to get us from one point to another. And I felt if we got a little bit more from him, maybe he starts getting flashbacks in his mind.
Hmm.
It doesn't even have to be flashbacks to how he got caught. It's just flashbacks to flesh him out a little bit more. Again, just like Piper, it doesn't have to be linear to the plot, but just to make us learn about the character and care about him a little bit more. So at the end, where it's like, all right, is he going to live or die? Like we care that much more. And I just didn't feel like we knew much about him except he was missing and, he was being used.
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't really care about him that much. He was more of a nightmare figure for me. He was scary and he was creepy. And yeah, I think, you know, after he damaged himself so severely, I think that for me, it was more like, oh my God, this guy just needs to die because what kind of life does he have? He just seems so messed up. Like, how is he ever going to recover from this? So, yeah, I didn't think of him in terms of, oh, I hope he lives or I hope he's okay. I just thought, oh, he's already gone.
So you're proving my point then. You
Yeah,
just
I
didn't
guess
care.
so.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I am. Yeah, yeah,
Inadvertently,
exactly.
you are. And the
Yeah.
last one, Laura, the last central character, this was a very small cast as well, which is good because it gave them a lot of time, even though they didn't get as much development as I would have liked. Laura, I think, was, Sally Hawkins was the star of the movie, and she was great.
Mhm.
But again, with her character, I wish they would have focused in less in trying to make her quirky. Oh, the quirky aunt or this quirky character, and just developed her a little bit more instead of trying to make her this like one-dimensional villain, one-dimensional focus. Maybe a few more flashbacks of her daughter, them happy together to humanize her a little bit. So we're a little bit conflicted at the end because the end is a beautiful image of her holding her daughter, and like I said in the script, like I wasn't sure, is she drowned? Is she dead? Is she alive? It doesn't really matter, but it's a beautiful image of her in the
Mhm.
pool cradling her daughter. But I didn't really care. I cared that Piper got away and Ollie got away, but I didn't really care about her. But her story is so tragic that I could have cared about her. I could have related to her more if they just made her a little bit more human and a little less quirky and villainish. Because hers is a tragic story, but it didn't really make her as tragic as they could have. Like if we really like empathized with her daughter's death, like maybe saw like it wasn't her fault, but she still blames herself. We can assert that, but
Mhm.
the movie didn't. We're projecting. The movie didn't show us anything. The movie didn't show us like it wasn't her fault in any way, but she still blames herself. It
Mhm.
just a little bit more flashbacks, a little bit more humanizing of her. I think would have gone a long way into making that beautiful image at the end more emotionally impactful.
Yeah. That's interesting you mentioned that because for a while there, I was kind of expecting them to reveal that she had killed her daughter on purpose or something, like that was going to be one of the twists is that
The
she,
fact that you would
you
even
know,
think that
yeah,
said is again making my point.
yeah,
She's too much of a clean slate, even at the end. You don't know enough about her to even make that assertion. If they
yeah,
developed her to a certain point, you wouldn't even think that. You'd be like, no, it's not her fault, but you wouldn't say
hmm,
that. But you don't
yeah,
know. You don't know.
yeah,
And then, 2 hours later, however long the movie was, there's still that question like of the daughter's death surrounding that. And
yeah,
so
that's true. Although I will say that I did find her to be kind of sympathetic for the first half or so. I found, because I knew her daughter had died and, she seemed like she was kind of being helpful in a way. I knew she was kind of not, you know, sympathetic, but at the same time, I did still feel something for her. But as the movie went on, yeah, she became more just the villain, and I wanted to see her die, basically, by the end of the movie.
yeah. So again, love the movie. These are just a few flaws that I saw in there that I don't know how I'll feel about it on a second or third viewing. Obviously, this movie just came out. It's a little bit new. Who knows, in a few years, if, we may rearrange Nosferatu, Sinners, and all of
Hmm.
these other movies. But for now, I think just because of how much this movie stuck with me, and the fact that I'm still thinking about it,
Hmm.
it's easily number one for me. Nosferatu looked great. Sinners was a fun ride, but the stories didn't really resonate with me in any way. They were just
Hmm.
fun movies. This was like emotional, and I really liked it. And again, I want to sandwich the bad stuff I said about the movie by saying one more last good thing before we wrap up. I thought how they handled the cult stuff was done very well. We didn't need a bunch of backstory explanation. You know,
Mhm.
how did she find the VHS tapes? Who gave it to her? We don't need all that. We can assert from the tapes she saw a ritual. She was trying to reenact it. Ollie was acting up. She started doing the circles on the head because she saw that calmed them down in the video and all that stuff. So we can add a few elements together for ourselves. And I like the fact that they didn't spoon feed us everything. Because honestly, it's kind of like Night of the Living Dead in a way, looking back at a classic horror movie, since, we're talking, good horror movies. We don't need to know that much backstory on the zombies. They're zombies now, okay? The more
Mhm.
backstory we know, the more stupid it's going to sound and the more
Yeah.
improbable it's
Yeah.
going to sound. And we don't need too much backstory because it's ridiculous. In a real world sense, it's ridiculous, but you can look past that if they just keep it vague. And I thought that the cult stuff was handled very well.
It was, yeah, it was really handled well. And for me, it was the experience of it. I found, as I said, the movie started with this sense of dread, and it just got worse and worse until it exploded in these scenes that just disturbed me thoroughly. And so, as an experience, I found it horrifying. I felt like I'd been through a traumatic experience by the end of this movie, and I didn't really notice a lot of flaws. I was just kind of being horrified. And I think that, if you're looking to eat popcorn and have a few laughs, this may not be the right movie for that. But if you are interested in something that may challenge you and may disturb you and may be legitimately scary and something that you may still be thinking about when you leave the theater, and in fact, in 20 years, you may still be thinking about this movie, then I would say, yeah, you definitely want to check this movie out.